The vast darkness of space surrounded the U.S. Defender as it patrolled the outer edges of human territory. Captain Tom Miller stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of control panels. 20 years in the Earth fleet had prepared him for many things, but not for what appeared on the long-range sensors that day. "Sir, unknown vessel approaching from Sector 7, reported Jack, the young radar specialist. His fingers flew across the screen as he tried to gather more information. It's huge. Nothing like I've ever seen before." Miller leaned forward, squinting at the main view screen. The object was sleek and silver, with an odd blue glow surrounding its hull. It moved with impossible grace for something its size. "Send standard greeting protocols," Miller ordered, straightening his uniform. "All stations on alert, but weapons remain passive. Let's not start a war today." The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife. Humanity had wondered about alien life for centuries, but actual contact had never been made. Until now. A response came almost instantly. "They're sending back a signal, sir," said Lisa, the communications officer. Her eyes widened as her screen filled with strange symbols that quickly transformed into English. They've already decoded our language from our transmission." Miller felt a chill run down his spine. The technological gap this implied was concerning. "On screen," he commanded. The view screen flickered, and the bridge crew gasped collectively. The alien that appeared had blue-gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth that seemed too wide for its narrow face. It wore what looked like armor made of a material that shifted colors slightly as it moved. "Greetings, humans," the alien spoke, its voice oddly musical despite the serious expression. "I am Commander Vex of the Galactic Union scout vessel Luminous. We have been observing your species for some time." Miller cleared his throat. "This is Captain Tom Miller of the United Earth Ship Defender. We welcome peaceful contact with your people." Vex's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "Peace is always preferred, Captain. Though I must say, we find it amusing that you patrol your borders with such primitive vessels." The bridge crew stiffened at the insult, but Miller kept his composure. "We make do with what we have, Commander. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss cultural exchange?" "Indeed," Vex replied. "I will send a shuttle to dock with your vessel. I look forward to seeing how your species has managed to achieve space travel with your limited capabilities." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. "Well, that was rude," Jack muttered. Miller sighed. "Prepare the conference room. Alert security, but keep it minimal. We don't want to appear hostile." 2 hours later, Miller stood in the docking bay as the alien shuttle connected with their ship. The door hissed open, revealing Commander Vex accompanied by 2 other aliens who appeared to be guards. They were all taller than the average human, with the same blue-gray skin and 4 eyes. "Welcome aboard the Defender," Miller said with a forced smile. Vex looked around the docking bay with all 4 eyes, not bothering to hide his assessment. "Interesting construction. Quite robust for such old technology." Miller led the aliens to the conference room where his first officer, Ben, and chief scientist, Emma, waited. The meeting began cordially enough, with basic information exchanged about their respective species. But Vex's condescension became increasingly apparent. "Your species has only been spacefaring for a few hundred years?" Vex said, his wide mouth forming what might have been a smile. "We had already colonized 12 star systems at that point in our development." Emma leaned forward. "Different species develop at different rates, Commander. We're quite proud of our progress." "As you should be," Vex replied. "For creatures with such biological limitations." Ben frowned. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Vex turned all 4 eyes toward Ben. "Well, your single pair of eyes limits your perception. Your fragile bodies require constant maintenance. Your lifespans are remarkably short. It's impressive you've managed to achieve what you have with such disadvantages." Miller saw Ben's jaw tighten. This was quickly becoming a diplomatic problem. "Perhaps," Miller interjected, "we could focus on areas where our species might collaborate rather than compare differences?" Vex turned to Miller. Of course, Captain. Though I wonder what humans could possibly offer the Galactic Union. The challenge hung in the air, unmistakable. The days following first contact were filled with tense meetings and uncomfortable exchanges. The human crew watched as aliens moved through their ship with obvious disdain, scanning everything with devices that hummed and glowed. Your propulsion system is fascinating, Vex commented as he examined the engine room with Engineer Rob. To think you've managed interstellar travel with such basic technology. Rob gripped his tablet tighter. It gets us where we need to go. Yes, at merely half-light speed, Vex replied. Our slowest cargo vessels move faster. By the 5th day, patience among the Defender's crew was wearing thin. Captain Miller called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. They're not here for friendship, Miller stated plainly. They're assessing us, and not in a good way. Emma nodded in agreement. Their technology is at least 3 centuries ahead of ours. The scans they're conducting seem focused on our weaknesses rather than cultural exchange. I don't trust them, Ben added. Especially that Commander Vex. He looks at us like we're animals in a zoo. Before Miller could respond, a message came through. Commander Vex requested his presence in the ship's gym, of all places. Curious and cautious, Miller made his way there with Ben at his side. They found Vex alone, examining the exercise equipment with his 4 eyes blinking in apparent amusement. Captain, Vex greeted. I was curious about how humans maintain their physical form. Your bodies seem to require constant work just to function properly. Exercise keeps us healthy, Miller explained. I assume your species has similar needs? Vex made a sound that might have been a laugh. Hardly. Our biology is far more efficient. We evolved past such primitive maintenance centuries ago. Miller forced a smile. Everyone has their methods. Indeed. Vex picked up a weight with surprising ease. I've been thinking, Captain. Our initial assessments of human capabilities have been disappointing. But I wonder if perhaps there are hidden qualities we've overlooked. What are you suggesting? Ben asked, his voice tight. A series of challenges, Vex said. Friendly competition between our species. To better understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. Miller exchanged a glance with Ben. What kind of challenges? Nothing too complex for your understanding, Vex said with that wide, unsettling smile. Physical trials, mental puzzles, technological demonstrations. Each designed to be fair, of course. And the purpose? Miller asked. Knowledge, Captain. And perhaps to determine if humans are worthy of true Galactic Union consideration. Vex set down the weight, leaving a slight dent in the floor. Unless you fear such direct comparison? The taunt was clear. Miller knew he should decline, should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions. But 5 days of condescension had taken its toll. I accept your challenge, Miller said firmly. But I choose our representative. Vex's 4 eyes widened slightly in apparent surprise. Very well. Who will represent humanity in these trials? Miller smiled. Not me. Him. He pointed to Ben, who stood straighter at the designation. Ben wasn't the strongest or fastest member of the crew, but he was certainly the most stubborn. A former survival specialist before becoming first officer, Ben had an uncanny ability to adapt to impossible situations. Vex studied Ben with all 4 eyes. The quiet one. Interesting choice. He extended a 6-fingered hand. Then it is agreed. 3 days of challenges. 3 challenges each day. Beginning tomorrow. Ben stepped forward and shook the alien's hand. I look forward to it. After Vex departed, Ben turned to Miller. Sir, with all due respect, what were you thinking? I was thinking that he expects us to send our best physical specimen, Miller replied. Someone like Security Chief Wilson. But this isn't about raw strength. This is psychological. And you think I can beat him? Their technology. This isn't about winning every challenge, Miller interrupted. It's about showing them that humans don't give up. That we have something they don't expect. He clasped Ben's shoulder. Your greatest strength is that you never accept defeat, Ben. No matter the odds. Ben nodded slowly, determination settling across his features. What do we know about their physiology? Their weaknesses? Almost nothing, Emma said, entering the gym. But I've been analyzing their scanning patterns. They're gathering unprecedented data on us while revealing almost nothing about themselves. Then we'll have to learn as we go, Ben said grimly. Miller looked between them. The fate of human-alien relations may depend on these challenges. No pressure. Ben's mouth curved into a determined smile. I always did work better under pressure, sir. The first day of challenges had been brutal. Ben stood in the medical bay as Emma checked his vitals, his body aching from the defeat he had suffered. Your temperature is still elevated, Emma said, frowning at her scanner. And those burns on your arm need another treatment. Ben winced as she applied a cooling gel to the red marks left by the energy field in the second challenge. At least I won the first one. The memory of that small victory was his only comfort. The obstacle course had seemed designed for Vex physiology, higher gravity, extreme temperatures, and obstacles requiring 4 eyes to navigate properly. Yet Ben had finished first, using human endurance and creativity to overcome the alien's natural advantages. You outthought him, Miller said, entering the medical bay. But the technology challenge and the reflex test were complete failures. Ben finished. His performance in those challenges had been embarrassing. Vex had solved complex equations in seconds while Ben struggled with the alien mathematics. And the reflex challenge had revealed the stark difference in their nervous systems. Vex could react almost 3 times faster than any human. The score stands at 2-1 in favor of Vex, Miller said. What are you thinking for tomorrow? Ben sat up, ignoring the pain. I'd been watching him. Studying his movements, his reactions. There's something there, something we can use. What did you notice? Emma asked. He's overconfident, Ben said. He doesn't adapt well when things don't go as expected. And there's something about water. Did you see how he avoided touching it during the obstacle course? Miller nodded thoughtfully. The Galactic Union database they shared mentions their home planet is mostly desert. Perhaps water is uncomfortable for them? Or dangerous, Emma added. Their skin seemed to react when exposed to the humid section of the course. Ben stood, a plan forming in his mind. I need to know tomorrow's challenges. Already ahead of you, Miller said, handing him a tablet. They submitted them an hour ago. Physical endurance, problem solving under pressure, and combat simulation. Ben scanned the details, a smile slowly spreading across his face. We can work with this. The next morning, Ben met Vex in the designated challenge area, a large cargo bay that had been cleared for the event. Crew members gathered around the edges, whispering among themselves. The atmosphere was tense but electric with anticipation. You move stiffly, human, Vex observed, his 4 eyes scanning Ben's posture. Perhaps we should delay today's events? I'm fine, Ben replied firmly. Let's begin. The endurance challenge came first, a test of how long each competitor could hold a heavy weight at arm's length. Ben's muscles burned as minutes passed, but he had spent the night studying Vex physiology from what little data they had. The alien's upper limbs, while stronger initially, seemed to fatigue at certain angles. Ben adjusted his stance slightly, changing the pressure points. Sweat poured down his face as pain shot through his shoulders. Beside him, Vex maintained a composed expression, but Ben noticed a slight tremor beginning in the alien's limbs. 20 minutes in, Vex's arms suddenly dropped, the weight clattering to the floor just seconds before Ben's own arms gave out. Impossible, Vex muttered, all 4 eyes blinking rapidly in confusion. Human determination, Ben replied, trying to keep the triumph from his voice as the crew cheered. The problem-solving challenge was next, a complex 3-dimensional puzzle that required rearranging energy patterns within a confined space. Ben had studied similar theoretical problems during his survival training. This challenge favors our neural pathways, Vex said confidently. Our brains process spatial relationships more efficiently. Ben said nothing, focusing instead on the puzzle. While Vex approached it systematically, Ben looked for patterns, connections that weren't immediately obvious. 15 minutes in, he found what he was looking for, a solution that wasn't the most elegant but would work faster than the conventional approach. When Ben completed the puzzle 2 minutes before Vex, the alien's composure finally cracked. "You cheated," Vex accused, his wide mouth pulled into a grimace. "I adapted," Ben corrected. "That's what humans do best." The score now stood at 3-2 in Ben's favor. The final challenge of the day, combat simulation, loomed ahead. As they prepared, Ben caught Miller's eye across the room and nodded slightly. Their plan was working. Vex approached, his posture rigid with newfound caution. "You are not what I expected, human." Ben smiled. "That's the first thing you've said that I agree with." The combat simulation arena glowed with blue light as Ben and Vex faced each other. The rules were simple. Each competitor would use non-lethal energy weapons to hit targets on the other's body. 3 hits would end the match. "Final challenge of Day 2, announced the ship's AI. "Combat simulation beginning in 30 seconds. Ben checked his weapon one last time. The lightweight pistol felt strange in his hand. It was based on alien technology, designed to disadvantage human reflexes. "Nervous, human?" Vex asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Our young learn these weapons before they can even speak." Ben met the alien's gaze steadily. "Then this should be easy for you." "Begin!" the AI called out. Vex moved with blinding speed, firing 3 rapid shots that Ben barely dodged. The crew gasped as Ben rolled behind a low barrier, energy blasts sizzling above his head. "Your reflexes are too slow," Vex called out. "Surrender now and save yourself embarrassment." Ben didn't reply. Instead, he calculated angles in his head, remembering Emma's late-night analysis of Vex's movement patterns. The alien had extraordinary speed but always followed predictable trajectories, optimal paths calculated by their superior minds. But optimal didn't always mean unexpected. Ben suddenly dashed from cover, not away from Vex, but directly toward him. The alien hesitated for a crucial half-second, surprised by the illogical approach. Ben fired, catching Vex on the shoulder. "Point, human!" announced the AI. Vex's wide mouth pulled into a thin line. "Look!" The alien then changed tactics, using the arena's barriers strategically, forcing Ben to remain in constant motion. A blast caught Ben's leg as he dove for cover. "Point, alien!" the AI updated. Ben winced at the stinging sensation but kept moving. The second round continued for nearly 10 minutes, both competitors landing glancing blows that didn't count as full hits. "You're tiring," Vex observed, seeing Ben's heavy breathing. "Your biological limitations are showing." Ben knew the alien was right. He couldn't keep this pace much longer. It was time for the backup plan. "Maybe," Ben admitted, then deliberately lowered his weapon slightly. "But I'm learning." Vex, sensing weakness, moved in for the finishing shot. As he rounded the barrier, Ben activated the small device in his pocket, one Emma had hastily constructed the night before. A fine mist sprayed into the air between them. Water vapor. Vex recoiled instantly, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly as his skin reacted to the moisture. Ben took advantage of the distraction, firing twice in rapid succession. "Points awarded. Match to human," the AI announced. The crew erupted in cheers. Day 2 had gone to Ben, 3-0. The overall score now stood at 4-2 in his favor. Commander Vex's self-control visibly slipped. "That was underhanded." "That was adaptation," Ben replied. "Using the environment to compensate for disadvantages. Exactly what this challenge was testing." Captain Miller approached, barely containing his satisfaction. "That concludes Day 2. Commander Vex, your team can prepare tomorrow's final challenges." Later, in the briefing room, the senior staff celebrated their victories. "His face when that water hit him," Jack laughed. "All 4 eyes looked ready to pop out." Emma studied her scanner. "The reaction was more severe than expected. Their skin appears to be highly sensitive to H2O molecules," It disrupts their neural pathways temporarily. We shouldn't get overconfident, Miller cautioned. Tomorrow will be harder. Vex won't underestimate Ben again. As if summoned by his name, Communications Officer Lisa rushed in. Captain, you need to see this. The alien vessel is powering up weapons systems. The room fell silent. Are they targeting us? Miller asked sharply. No, sir. But they're running combat drills very close to our position. It feels like a threat. Ben stood. This isn't just about challenges anymore. Vex is taking this personally. I've analyzed their transmission patterns, Emma added. They've sent significant data back to their ship after each challenge. I think they're studying human responses, looking for weaknesses. Miller's expression hardened. Then we need to win tomorrow. Convincingly. If these challenges are determining whether humans are seen as equals or targets, we can't afford to lose. Ben nodded grimly. What do we know about tomorrow's challenges? They've changed them, Lisa reported. Originally they were tests of creativity, mathematical ability, and strategic thinking. Now they're all focused on one thing, survival against overwhelming odds. They're stacking the deck, Miller said softly. Ben's jaw tightened. Let them try. If there's one thing humans know how to do, it's survive when everything's against us. Get some rest, Miller told him. Tomorrow, you're not just fighting for pride. You might be fighting for humanity's future. The final day of challenges dawned with an unsettling quiet throughout the ship. The crew moved with purpose, exchanging worried glances as reports came in about the alien vessel's continued combat drills. In the mess hall, Ben sat alone, reviewing everything they knew about Vex and his species. Mind if I join you? Emma asked, setting down her tray. Ben nodded, pushing aside his barely touched breakfast. What's the latest? Their ship has positioned itself between us and Earth, Emma said quietly. If things go badly today... She didn't need to finish the thought. The stakes had become clear to everyone. I've been thinking about their challenges, Ben said. All three focus on survival scenarios. They expect me to approach them like a human, to fight directly against impossible odds. Isn't that what you'll have to do? Ben smiled slightly. Not necessarily. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting the hardest. It's about changing the rules of engagement. The first challenge took place in a holographic environment designed to simulate extreme conditions. Ben and Vex stood at the edge of what appeared to be an active volcano, heat rippling the air around them. Survival Challenge 1, announced the alien AI. Cross the lava field and reach the safe zone. Local temperature is lethal to both species after 10 minutes of exposure. Vex turned to Ben, all four eyes gleaming with renewed confidence. Our bodies can withstand temperatures 50% higher than yours. This challenge is, regrettably, unbalanced. We'll see, Ben replied. When the signal came, Vex moved with precise efficiency, using the scattered rock platforms to make his way across. His longer limbs and superior balance made the crossing look effortless. Ben took a different approach. Instead of following Vex's path, he studied the volcanic patterns, noticing how the lava flowed in predictable currents. He removed his uniform jacket, tearing it into strips which he soaked with his water ration. What is the human doing? One of Vex's crew members asked loudly. Ben wrapped the damp cloth around his hands and feet, then began moving across sections that appeared impassable. The wet fabric protected him just long enough to make short, dangerous leaps that cut the distance in half. He reached the safe zone mere seconds before Vex, his improvised gear smoking but successful. Point human, the AI announced. Vex's composure slipped further. A lucky shortcut. No, Ben replied, displaying his blistered hands. A calculated risk. Humans understand pain as a survival tool. The second challenge placed them in a simulated airless environment. Their task: repair a damaged life support system before their limited oxygen supply ran out. Vex, with his more efficient respiratory system, had a clear advantage. He could function for nearly twice as long as Ben without fresh oxygen. As Ben struggled with the unfamiliar alien technology, his vision beginning to blur from oxygen deprivation, he suddenly stopped trying to repair the system as designed. "Your approach is flawed," Vex said, already halfway through his repairs. "You cannot possibly." Ben ignored him, instead rerouting the entire system to create a smaller but functional air pocket that would require less energy and time to generate. It wasn't the solution in the manual, but it would work. When Ben's jury-rigged system sputtered to life, creating a bubble of breathable air while Vex was still meticulously following proper repair protocols, the alien actually hissed in frustration. "Point human," the AI announced. "Final challenge commencing." The final test was the most dangerous, a simulated ship evacuation during catastrophic failure. One escape pod, limited time, and obstacles deliberately placed to prevent both competitors from succeeding. As alarms blared and holographic fires spread around them, Vex and Ben raced through corridors, solving problems and clearing pathways. When they reached the escape pod, only one could enter, by design. Vex reached it first, his superior speed unbeatable in the straightaway. "I win, human," he said, hand on the entry panel. Ben stood straight, not contesting the outcome. "Then take your victory." Vex hesitated, all four eyes fixed on Ben. "You concede?" "No," Ben replied calmly. "I'm acknowledging your personal victory while ensuring mutual survival." Confusion spread across Vex's features. "Explain." "The challenge isn't about who gets the escape pod first," Ben said. "It's about survival against overwhelming odds. Sometimes that means working together." He pointed to the pod's specifications visible on the panel. "This pod can actually hold both of us if we reconfigure the internals. We both survive, or either does." Vex stared at him for a long moment, realization dawning across his alien features. "You never intended to compete directly," Vex said slowly. "Because sometimes," Ben replied, "winning isn't about being first or best. It's about finding solutions nobody else considered." After a tense moment, Vex stepped aside, allowing Ben to help reconfigure the pod. "Point to humanity," the alien finally said. The observation deck of the U.S. Defender had been transformed for the formal ceremony. Earth flags stood alongside the blue and silver banners of the Galactic Union. The crew, dressed in their finest uniforms, lined the walls as Captain Miller and Commander Vex met in the center of the room. 3 days ago," Miller began, addressing the mixed audience of humans and aliens, "we embarked on a series of challenges to better understand each other. Today, we formalize what we've learned." Vex stepped forward, his posture noticeably different than before. Gone was the arrogance that had defined his earlier interactions. Instead, he carried himself with what might be called respect. "The Galactic Union has encountered many species throughout our exploration," Vex said, his voice carrying through the silent room. "Most have been assessed based on technological achievement, mathematical advancement, or biological efficiency." He turned his 4 eyes toward Ben, who stood at attention beside Miller. "Humans," Vex continued, "defied our standard assessment metrics. Where we expected failure, we found innovation. Where we anticipated surrender, we discovered determination. When faced with impossible situations, humans created possibilities." Miller nodded to Lisa, who brought forward a small wooden box. Inside rested a simple metal disc embossed with Earth's continents on one side and strange alien symbols on the other. "This token," Miller explained, "represents the first formal recognition of humanity by the Galactic Union. Not as subjects or protectorates, but as equals." Murmurs of approval rippled through the crew as Vex accepted the token. "It also," the alien added, "carries my personal apology." The room fell silent once more. "I came to your ship certain of my species' superiority," Vex admitted. "I conducted these challenges expecting to prove that certainty. Instead, I learned a valuable lesson about different forms of advancement." Ben stepped forward. "And we learned that technological progress isn't the only measure of a civilization's worth." After the ceremony, as the two groups mingled with newfound camaraderie, Ben found Vex standing alone by the viewport, staring out at the stars. Credits for your thoughts? Ben asked, using a phrase he taught the alien earlier. I am contemplating failure, Vex replied. Not yours. Mine. The challenges? You won several. Not the challenges, Vex interrupted. My understanding. My perspective. He turned all four eyes to Ben. My ship carries advanced weapons capable of destroying your vessel in seconds. My species has technologies your people cannot yet comprehend. By every measurable standard, we should be superior. Ben nodded. But superiority cannot be measured by technology alone. Your kind possesses something we have lost in our advancement: adaptability, creativity, the willingness to fail in order to discover unexpected solutions. Vex made a gesture that Ben had come to recognize as thoughtfulness. These traits may be more valuable than any weapon or equation. Is that what you'll report to your union? Ben asked. Yes, Vex confirmed. I will recommend full diplomatic relations with humanity. And, he hesitated, I have requested to remain as the primary contact with your species. Ben smiled. Going to study us some more? Going to learn from you, Vex corrected. Our advancement has made us rigid, predictable, perhaps dangerously so. Captain Miller joined them, carrying 3 glasses of Earth whiskey. I thought we might toast to new beginnings. Vex accepted his glass carefully, having been briefed on the human custom. To new beginnings, he agreed. As they sipped their drinks, Vex with visible caution that made Ben smile, Miller gazed out at the stars. What happens now? The captain asked. My vessel will escort yours to the nearest Galactic Union outpost, Vex explained. There your leaders can meet with Union representatives to establish formal diplomatic protocols. Your scientists will be given access to certain technologies as gestures of good faith. And the challenges? Ben asked. Will other humans have to prove themselves too? Vex's wide mouth formed what Ben now recognized as a smile. I believe one human has proven enough for your entire species. My official report will state that humanity possesses unique qualities that numerical assessment cannot capture. As the gathering continued around them, the 3 stood in companionable silence, looking out at the vast expanse of space, no longer a barrier between their kinds but a shared frontier. You know, Ben said finally, for a while there, I thought we might end up at war. We might have, Vex admitted. Had you not shown me that true superiority isn't about power or technology? It's about finding solutions that benefit all. Miller raised his glass again. To understanding our differences. And valuing them, Vex finished. The Earth ship and alien vessel traveled side by side through the stars, their lights blending together in the darkness, different, but equal in the vastness of space.